I was 12 when this happened, and it was the first and last time I ever babysat. A single mom who lived down the street had asked me to watch her kids on a Saturday because she had to work a shift and could not find anybody else. I knew her casually from the neighborhood, and she said it would be easy. Just hang out, make them lunch, and keep them entertained until around 4 or 5. There were 3 kids. The oldest was a boy, maybe 7 or 8. The other 2 were girls, both around 5. One of the girls was his little sister, and the other was a friend who had come over to play for the day. The moment I got there, the boy was on the couch, completely zoned out, watching some cartoon with the volume cranked way too loud. The girls were off in a separate room playing with dolls. The mom gave me a rushed set of instructions: what to make for lunch, which numbers to call in an emergency, stuff like that, and then she left. The morning was quiet. I mostly stayed near the girls, since they actually seemed interested in talking to me and showing me their dolls. The boy did not say a word. He barely looked at me when I asked him questions, and never responded beyond a shrug. I figured he was just shy or did not like being babysat. It was around noon when I went into the kitchen to make grilled cheese sandwiches. The girls were still in their playroom, and the boy was still in the living room. I could hear the TV from the kitchen. I was halfway through buttering the bread when suddenly heard screaming. Not playing around screaming, real panic screaming. I dropped the knife and ran to the back door. The backyard was fenced in, and there was this little plastic playhouse in the corner. The 2 girls were inside of it, and they were shrieking. The boy was outside the playhouse, holding a huge kitchen knife, one of those big ones from the block, and he was jabbing it through the plastic slits in the window while laughing. I froze for a split second. He was actually laughing. This high-pitched, unhinged sort of laugh. And the girls were huddled together in the back of the playhouse, crying and screaming at him to stop. I started shouting his name, but he didn't even flinch. He just kept stabbing, not wildly, but over and over, as if he was aiming carefully through the gaps. I ran at him and yelled again, but he did not stop until I physically tackled him. I grabbed his wrist and tried to pull the knife out of his hand, but he twisted hard and slashed me across the fingers. I did not even feel it at the time, just noticed the blood. He was kicking and thrashing and tried to bite me as I pinned him down. It probably took me a full minute to wrestle the knife out of his hand. I threw it as far as I could into the grass and dragged him back into the house. He fought the entire time, scratching, punching, trying to yank away from me. I shoved him into his room and slammed the door, then stood there shaking with my back against it for a while, just trying to calm myself down. The girls were still in the playhouse, scared stiff. I coaxed them out eventually and checked them over. They were fine, just terrified. I locked the back door and then called the mom. I told her everything. She did not say much on the phone, just told me she'd leave work early and hung up. When she showed up, I thought she'd be horrified, or at least concerned, but instead, she seemed more annoyed than anything. She glanced at the bandages I had wrapped around my hand and said something like, "He wasn't actually going to hurt them," and then gave him a hard smack across the head right in front of me. He did not react, just stared at the floor. And then she looked at me and said I shouldn't have let it get that far, and that I needed to learn how to control the situations if I wanted to be a babysitter. I didn't say anything to that. I just stood there while she complained about having to leave work early and how stressful it was on being a single mom. She did not offer to pay me either, didn't even thank me for calling her, just told me I could go now. I walked home still shaking, with dried blood on my fingers and a knot in my stomach. My parents were furious when I told them what happened. They called her later that night and tore into her over the phone. I don't think she ever apologized. And to this day, I don't know what was going through that kid's head. Maybe it was just a twisted game to him. Maybe he didn't understand what he was doing. Or maybe he just didn't care. And I know I'll never forget the sound of those girls screaming inside that playhouse. When I was 9 years old, I started babysitting my neighbor's 2 daughters. I know, 9 is way too young to be left in charge of other kids, but at the time, it did not feel that weird. Their parents were only going out for a couple of hours. They lived right next door, and I was mature for my age, or at least that's what everyone said. The girls I was watching were 5 and 3, sisters who shared a room with a bunk bed. I had known them since they were babies, so I felt comfortable with them. Their parents gave me a quick rundown. Dinner was already done, they had their baths, and bedtime was in 15 minutes. I was told I could watch TV downstairs after they were in bed. Things went smoothly for the first hour. I got them into their pajamas, read them a short story, and tucked them in. They were both out cold by the time I got to the bottom of the stairs. I turned on the living room TV and sat on the couch. Maybe 5 minutes passed, no more than that, when I heard what sounded like one of the girls crying. Then the quick patter of feet running, and a door slamming. It was coming from upstairs. I muted the TV and listened. The crying was loud, not a whimper. This was hysterical, almost panic sobbing. I figured one of the girls must have had a nightmare and run to the bathroom. I went up to check, heading straight to the bathroom door. It was locked, which was strange. The parents told me neither girl knew how to use the locks yet. I knocked and called out, "Hey, it's me. Are you okay?" But the crying just kept going. No words, no response. Just the same uncontrollable sobbing. It started to feel wrong, if that makes sense. Something was off, but I couldn't place it. I thought maybe the other sister was still asleep, and I could get her to help coax her sister out. I went to the room and opened the door gently. They were both in bed. Both of them. One on the top bunk, one on the bottom. Breathing slowly, completely asleep. I stood there frozen for a few seconds, just listening. I could still hear the crying coming from the bathroom, loud and clear, but both girls were right in front of me, definitely asleep. I backed out of the room and went downstairs, kind of freaked out, trying to think what to do. I stood by the bottom of the stairs and listened again. Still crying, still the same locked bathroom. I did not have a cell phone at the time, and I was too embarrassed to call the parents at the restaurant unless something was seriously wrong. So I sat there on the bottom step, just waiting, crying still going. At that point, I wasn't even trying to figure it out anymore. I was just counting the minutes until their parents came home. They showed up maybe 30 minutes later. I was so shaken I did not even let them take their coats off. I just told them what happened and brought them upstairs. The crying was still going on when we got to the door, but just as their dad reached the handle, it stopped. Completely. And get this, the door wasn't locked anymore. He opened it, and the bathroom was empty. Just like that. No one inside. Nothing out of place. I expected them to tell me it was a prank, or that maybe I imagined it, but they both looked disturbed. The mom asked if I was okay walking home, and when I said yes, she shook her head and told her husband to walk me, which was weird because my house was literally 3 doors down. I never babysat again after that night, at least not until I was much older. It scared me enough that I avoided that house for a while. And the weirdest part is, it never came up again. The parents never mentioned it. I think they didn't want to talk about it, and honestly, I didn't either. I've told a few people this story, and most of them tried to explain it away. Maybe I was just a tired kid with an overactive imagination. Maybe one of the girls sleptwalked and managed to sneak back into the bed somehow. I don't know. But I know what I saw and what I heard. 2 kids asleep, a locked door, crying that kept going until someone opened that door. And when I tell you this, I absolutely mean it. It is still one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. I was maybe 16 or 17 when this happened. I just started picking up more babysitting jobs to save up for my first car. A family a few blocks over got my number through a neighbor and asked if I could watch their 2 kids, both under 10, while they went out for dinner and a movie. I'd never been to their house before, but I said yes. They seemed normal and friendly enough when I met them. Gave me a short rundown of bedtime routines, emergency numbers, the usual. Nothing out of the ordinary. The night started fine. The kids were good. No drama about brushing teeth or going to bed. By 8:30, they were both asleep, and I was stretched out on their living room couch with a book in my hand. The house was quiet, but not uncomfortably so. Just the kind of low ambient noise you would expect. Refrigerator humming, maybe the faint ticking of a wall clock. At the end of the couch, maybe 10 feet away, was a white door I hadn't paid much attention to. I assumed it led outside, or maybe to the laundry room. It did not have any windows, and they hadn't mentioned it during the quick house tour. Around 9:15 or so, I was halfway through a chapter when I heard footsteps. Not from the hallway or upstairs. Right behind that door, followed immediately by heavy breathing. There was no mistaking it. Not like a breeze or the house settling. Actual breathing. Like a guy with a chest cold trying to keep it quiet. Slow and raspy. Just on the other side of the door. I froze. I couldn't even put the book down. I just stared at the door, my heart pounding in my ears. At first I thought maybe I was zoning out or dozing off, but then the breathing kept going. I held my breath, trying to listen better. There were definitely slow, deliberate steps, pacing or shifting weight, accompanied by that deep, congested-sounding breathing. I sat there maybe 10 seconds, completely paralyzed. Then the footsteps started to fade. Whoever, or whatever it was, seemed to be walking away from the door. I tried to stand up as quietly as possible. I needed to check on the kids, grab my phone, figure out if I was actually in danger or not. But of course, the couch creaked under me. One of those old-school wooden frame couches with the loud joints. And right as it creaked, I heard the footsteps sprint back to the door, full speed, thudding across the floor. Then the breathing again, this time louder, more labored. It sounded panicked or angry. I honestly couldn't tell at the time. Well, that was it. I did not care if I was overreacting. I went straight to the kids' room, closed the door behind me, locked it, and called their parents. I tried to keep my voice down, but I was definitely shaking and probably sounded on the edge of tears. I told them someone was in the house, or at least right outside that room with the white door, and I did not know what to do. The mom did not seem scared at first, just confused. I repeated what I heard and said, "There's someone behind that white door at the end of your couch. They were breathing really loud and walked up when I moved." That's when she started laughing. Not mean, but like she couldn't believe she forgot something. She apologized immediately and told me not to worry. Apparently, that door leads to this little side storage room off the main living room. It used to be a breezeway that was closed in years ago, and their dog, an old, mostly deaf golden retriever, sleeps in there because he doesn't get along well with guests or kids. She said he probably heard me move or got excited thinking that they were home. But because he has some kind of joint problem, he doesn't walk normally, more like these uneven hopping steps. That's what I'd heard. The heavy breathing was just him, panting hard because he gets winded easily, especially when he's excited or worked up. They came home about 15 minutes later. Her husband opened the side room door, and out came this big, shaggy old dog, tail wagging and everything. He looked more like a sheep than a dog. Sweet as face, but I can't lie. It was unnerving seeing him in person after everything I'd imagined. I'd built up this whole thing in my head that there was a guy hiding in there, waiting for me. They were really apologetic, and even paid me extra for my scare. But I don't think I ever babysat there again. I told them I was too busy with school stuff, which wasn't exactly a lie. But really, I just couldn't sit in that house again without hearing those footsteps every time the room got quiet. Was it dangerous? No. But in the moment, it was the most scared I'd ever been.